Before I begin, if you've ever lived through betrayal like this, please like, leave a comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. The day my mother-in-law lost $50,000 started like any other Tuesday morning. I was standing in my kitchen, still half asleep, watching coffee drip slowly into the pot while the sun crept through the blinds. My husband Daniel had already left for work, and the house was quiet except for the ticking clock above the stove. Then my phone rang. When I looked at the screen and saw Linda, my husband's mother, my first reaction was confusion. Linda almost never called me directly. If she wanted something, she usually called Daniel. I answered anyway. "Hello?" At first, all I heard was sobbing, loud, dramatic sobbing that made my heart immediately tighten. "Linda? What's wrong?" She gasped for breath between cries. "They took it! They took everything!" My mind raced through possibilities. Had someone robbed her house? Had something happened to her retirement account? "What happened?" I asked gently. "My money, my savings, it's gone!" The way she said it made my stomach twist. "Gone?" I asked carefully. "What do you mean, gone?" There was a long pause before she answered. "I invested it." "In what?" "Crypto." I blinked. Now, I'm not an expert in cryptocurrency, but I knew enough to understand it could be risky. "How much did you invest?" I asked. Another pause. Then she whispered, "50,000." I nearly dropped the phone. "Linda, $50,000? That was my savings!" she cried, "and now it's gone." My first instinct was sympathy. Losing that much money would devastate anyone. "What happened again?" I asked gently. She began explaining in frantic bursts. Apparently, someone had contacted her online about a guaranteed investment opportunity. They showed her a professional-looking website, fake charts, fake profits, and even let her withdraw a small amount at first to build trust. Classic scam tactics, though at the time I didn't fully realize it. Over the course of 3 months, she transferred money little by little. 5,000 here, 10,000 there, until eventually it totaled $50,000. "And now the account is locked," she cried. "The customer service won't respond. Their phone numbers don't work." My chest tightened. I hated hearing someone that desperate. "I'm so sorry, Linda," I said quietly, and for a moment I truly meant it. But then her voice suddenly changed. It hardened. "So Daniel will need to replace it." I thought I had misheard her. "I'm sorry, what?" "You and Daniel will pay me back," she said as if stating something obvious. I stood there in my kitchen, frozen. "Linda, that's not how scams work." "You're my family," she snapped. "Family takes care of each other." I felt a slow, uncomfortable heat rising in my chest. "Daniel and I didn't invest that money." "You should have stopped me," she shot back. My eyebrows lifted. "You never told us about it." "Well, you should have been paying attention," she snapped. That was the first moment I realized something was very wrong with this conversation. I tried to stay calm. "Linda, I'm really sorry you were scammed, but we can't just give you $50,000. Her breathing grew louder through the phone. "You have savings." "That's for our house," I said. "You can take out a loan." My jaw tightened. "Linda, you owe me," she interrupted. The words hit me like a slap. "Owe me?" I repeated slowly. "Yes," she said firmly. "I raised Daniel. I sacrificed everything for him. The least you two can do is help me when I need it." My patience started to crack. Helping someone is one thing. Replacing $50,000 they voluntarily sent to scammers, that's something entirely different. "Linda," I said carefully, "we can help you report the scam. Maybe your bank can recover some of the money." they said they can't," she yelled. "I'm sorry. That's not good enough." Her voice had gone from desperate to furious within a matter of seconds. "I need my money back, and we don't have $50,000 to give." Another long silence filled the phone. Then she said something that made my stomach twist. "If you don't help me, I'll tell everyone what kind of people you really are." I frowned. "What does that mean?" "You'll see." Then she hung up. I stood in my kitchen staring at my phone for a full minute. My coffee machine beeped to let me know it had finished brewing, but suddenly I had no appetite for coffee or anything else. When Daniel came home that evening, I told him everything, every detail. At first, he just sat there rubbing his temples. 50,000? I said. "That's what she said." He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. "My mom doesn't even understand how crypto works." Apparently the scammers did. He sighed heavily. "I can't believe she fell for that." Then he looked at me. "And she wants us to replace it?" "Yes." Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "Absolutely not." I felt a wave of relief. "I thought you'd say that. We can barely afford our mortgage. Where does she think we're getting $50,000? That's what I asked. He shook his head. "I'll call her." And he did. I listened from the kitchen while he spoke to her in the living room. At first, his voice was calm. "Mom, I'm really sorry this happened." Then it became firmer. "No, we can't give you $50,000. Then sharper. "That's not our responsibility." Then frustrated. "You chose to invest that money." Finally, he raised his voice. "No, Mom, threatening us isn't going to change anything." The call ended shortly after. Daniel walked into the kitchen looking exhausted. "How bad was it?" I asked. He sighed. "She says if we don't pay her back, she's going to tell the entire family we stole the money from her." My eyes widened. "What?" "She claims we convinced her to invest it." "That's insane." "I know." We both stood there in silence, but neither of us realized yet that this was only the beginning, because within 3 days, Linda would turn our entire extended family against us, and the lie she told them was far worse than anything we imagined. The first sign that Linda had started her campaign against us came 3 days later, on a quiet Friday evening. Daniel and I were sitting on the couch halfway through a movie neither of us was really paying attention to. Work had been stressful that week, and we were both trying to unwind. Then Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. "It's my cousin, Mark." "Answer it," I said. He picked up the phone and put it on speaker. "Hey, Mark." There was no greeting on the other end, just an immediate burst of anger. "How could you do that to your own mother?" Daniel and I both froze. "Do what?" Daniel asked slowly. "Don't play dumb," Mark snapped. "She told us everything." Daniel looked at me, confused. "Mark, I have no idea what you're talking about." "Oh, really?" Mark said bitterly. "You convinced your own mother to invest her life savings in crypto, and now that it's gone, you're refusing to help her?" I felt my stomach drop. Daniel sat up straight. "That's not what happened." "That's exactly what she said." Daniel rubbed his forehead. "Mark, listen to me carefully. Mom invested that money on her own." Mark scoffed loudly. "Sure she did." "Mark, you should be ashamed of yourself." Then the line went dead. Daniel slowly lowered his phone. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Daniel's Aunt Karen. "I can't believe what you did to Linda. Family doesn't treat each other this way." Another buzz, this time from Daniel's younger sister Rachel. "Mom is devastated. If you have any decency left, you'll fix this." Daniel's phone buzzed again, and again, and again. Within 15 minutes, we had messages from 6 different relatives. Every single one of them believed Linda's story. Every single one of them thought we had manipulated her into investing her money and then abandoned her when it disappeared. I sat there staring at the flood of accusations, feeling something heavy settle in my chest. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. Linda had deliberately lied, and people believed her. Daniel leaned back against the couch, staring at his phone with a tired expression. "She's really doing this," he muttered. "Looks like it." He sighed. "I should have known." That comment caught my attention. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. Then he said something that surprised me. "My mom has always been like this." I tilted my head. "Like what?" "Whenever something goes wrong, it's never her fault." I thought back over the years I'd known Linda. There had been moments, small ones, things I had brushed off at the time, like the time she blamed a cashier for stealing $20 from her purse only to find it later in her coat pocket, or the time she insisted a neighbor had scratched her car even though the security camera showed she had scrapped it herself while parking. But this was different. This wasn't a small misunderstanding. This was a lie that could destroy relationships. I sat there staring at the flood of accusations, feeling something heavy settle in my chest. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. Linda had deliberately lied, and people believed her. Daniel leaned back against the couch, staring at his phone with a tired expression. "She's really doing this," he muttered. "Looks like it." He sighed. "I should have known." That comment caught my attention. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. Then he said something that surprised me. "My mom has always been like this." I tilted my head. "Like what?" "Whenever something goes wrong, it's never her fault." I thought back over the years I'd known Linda. There had been moments, small ones, things I had brushed off at the time, like the time she blamed a cashier for stealing $20 from her purse only to find it later in her coat pocket, or the time she insisted a neighbor had scratched her car even though the security camera showed she had scrapped it herself while parking. But this was different. This wasn't a small misunderstanding. This was a lie that could destroy relationships. I sat there staring at the flood of accusations, feeling something heavy settle in my chest. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. Linda had deliberately lied, and people believed her. Daniel leaned back against the couch, staring at his phone with a tired expression. "She's really doing this," he muttered. "Looks like it." He sighed. "I should have known." That comment caught my attention. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. Then he said something that surprised me. "My mom has always been like this." I tilted my head. "Like what?" "Whenever something goes wrong, it's never her fault." I thought back over the years I'd known Linda. There had been moments, small ones, things I had brushed off at the time, like the time she blamed a cashier for stealing $20 from her purse only to find it later in her coat pocket, or the time she insisted a neighbor had scratched her car even though the security camera showed she had scrapped it herself while parking. But this was different. This wasn't a small misunderstanding. This was a lie that could destroy relationships. I sat there staring at the flood of accusations, feeling something heavy settle in my chest. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. Linda had deliberately lied, and people believed her. Daniel leaned back against the couch, staring at his phone with a tired expression. "She's really doing this," he muttered. "Looks like it." He sighed. "I should have known." That comment caught my attention. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. Then he said something that surprised me. "My mom has always been like this." I tilted my head. "Like what?" "Whenever something goes wrong, it's never her fault." I thought back over the years I'd known Linda. There had been moments, small ones, things I had brushed off at the time, like the time she blamed a cashier for stealing $20 from her purse only to find it later in her coat pocket, or the time she insisted a neighbor had scratched her car even though the security camera showed she had scrapped it herself while parking. But this was different. This wasn't a small misunderstanding. This was a lie that could destroy relationships. I sat there staring at the flood of accusations, feeling something heavy settle in my chest. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. Linda had deliberately lied, and people believed her. Daniel leaned back against the couch, staring at his phone with a tired expression. "She's really doing this," he muttered. "Looks like it." He sighed. "I should have known." That comment caught my attention. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. Then he said something that surprised me. "My mom has always been like this." I tilted my head. "Like what?" "Whenever something goes wrong, it's never her fault." I thought back over the years I'd known Linda. There had been moments, small ones, things I had brushed off at the time, like the time she blamed a cashier for stealing $20 from her purse only to find it later in her coat pocket, or the time she insisted a neighbor had scratched her car even though the security camera showed she had scrapped it herself while parking. But this was different. This wasn't a small misunderstanding. This was a lie that could destroy relationships. I sat there staring at the flood of accusations, feeling something heavy settle in my chest. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. Linda had deliberately lied, and people believed her. Daniel leaned back against the couch, staring at his phone with a tired expression. "She's really doing this," he muttered. "Looks like it." He sighed. "I should have known." That comment caught my attention. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. Then he said something that surprised me. "My mom has always been like this." I tilted my head. "Like what?" "Whenever something goes wrong, it's never her fault." I thought back over the years I'd known Linda. There had been moments, small ones, things I had brushed off at the time, like the time she blamed a cashier for stealing $20 from her purse only to find it later in her coat pocket, or the time she insisted a neighbor had scratched her car even though the security camera showed she had scrapped it herself while parking. But this was different. This wasn't a small misunderstanding. This was a lie that could destroy relationships. I sat there staring at the flood of accusations, feeling something heavy settle in my chest. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. Linda had deliberately lied, and people believed her. Daniel leaned back against the couch, staring at his phone with a tired expression. "She's really doing this," he muttered. "Looks like it." He sighed. "I should have known." That comment caught my attention. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. Then he said something that surprised me. "My mom has always been like this." I tilted my head. "Like what?" "Whenever something goes wrong." 2 days after Linda stormed out of our house, I was at the grocery store comparing 2 brands of pasta sauce when my phone rang. It was Daniel. Normally, he didn't call during work hours unless something important was happening. I answered immediately. "Hey, everything okay?" For a moment, he didn't speak. Then he said quietly, "I think my mom just tried to ruin my career." My heart dropped straight into my stomach. "What happened?" "I need you to come home," he said. "I'll explain everything." His voice sounded tight, the way it does when someone is trying very hard to stay calm but is failing. I abandoned the shopping cart right there in the aisle and drove home. When I walked through the door 20 minutes later, Daniel was sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open. His face looked pale and exhausted. "What happened?" I asked again. He turned the screen toward me. It was an email from his manager. The subject line read, Urgent. Complaint received. My chest tightened as I read. The email explained that someone had contacted the company's HR department with a serious allegation. According to the complaint, Daniel had been giving financial investment advice to family members and pressuring them to put money into risky cryptocurrency schemes. The complaint specifically claimed he had persuaded his own mother to invest $50,000, which she had now lost. My heat rushed to my face. "She reported you?" I whispered. Daniel nodded slowly. "She told them I convinced her to invest." "That's not just a family lie," I said quietly. "I know. This could get you fired." "Exactly." My hands trembled slightly as I scrolled through the rest of the email. HR wanted to schedule a meeting the next morning to discuss the accusation. My stomach churned. Daniel worked as a financial analyst, not a crypto advisor, not an investment promoter, but someone who handled data and forecasting for a mid-sized consulting firm. Still, the accusation made it sound like he had been pushing risky investments on people, which in the finance world was a huge ethical violation. "You didn't tell her to invest anything," I said. "I know that. You know that. But HR doesn't know that." Daniel leaned back in his chair and rubbed his face. "I can't believe she went this far." Neither could I. Up until that moment, Linda's behavior had felt manipulative and cruel, but this crossed into something else entirely. This was retaliation, and it was dangerous. "What are you going to say to HR?" I asked. "The truth." "Do you have proof?" Daniel hesitated. That silence said everything. Most of the conversations with his mother had been phone calls, and Linda had clearly thought ahead before making this accusation. "She's probably showing them text messages," I said slowly. "I barely text with her." "That might actually help." He sighed. "I just hope they believe me." That night, neither of us slept well. The next morning, Daniel went into the HR meeting while I waited anxiously at home. Those 2 hours felt like the longest of my life. I kept imagining worst-case scenarios: Daniel losing his job, our mortgage payments piling up, our savings disappearing just to survive, all because Linda wanted someone else to pay for her mistake. Finally, my phone rang. It was Daniel. I answered before the first ring finished. "How did it go?" He exhaled slowly. "They didn't fire me." I nearly collapsed with relief. "Oh, thank God." "But," he continued, my stomach clenched again, "they're still investigating." "What does that mean?" "It means they want evidence." I frowned. "Evidence of what?" "That I didn't pressure my mom into investing." "How are you supposed to prove something didn't happen?" "That's the problem." He explained that Linda had sent HR a long written statement describing how Daniel supposedly encouraged her to invest in cryptocurrency. She even claimed he had shown her a specific trading platform, which, according to Daniel, he had never even heard of. "She's making up details," I said. "Yeah." "What did HR say?" "They asked if I had any proof that I didn't recommend the investment." "And?" I told them the truth. I barely talked to my mom about finances. That part was actually true. Linda had always been secretive about her money. Ironically, that secrecy might save us. "They're going to contact her directly," Daniel continued. "And?" "And they're going to ask for more details." I sat down slowly. "Do you think she'll back down?" Daniel shook his head. "No." And he was right, because that afternoon, things escalated again, this time publicly. Daniel's phone started buzzing nonstop while we were making dinner, message after message from coworkers. He opened one, then another. His expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. "What?" I asked. He turned the screen toward me. Someone had posted about him online. Not just anyone. Linda. She had written a long Facebook post claiming her son had pressured her into a crypto investment, then refused to help when it collapsed. But this time, she added something new. She said Daniel had used his professional expertise to convince her it was safe, which made it sound like he had abused his financial career to manipulate her. Hundreds of people had already seen it. Some of them were her coworkers. I felt anger rising like a storm inside me. "She's destroying your reputation." Daniel stared at the screen silently. Then he said something that surprised me. "I think it's time we stop playing defense." I looked at him. "What do you mean?" He closed the laptop slowly. "I think we need to start proving what actually happened." "How?" Daniel's eyes hardened in a way I had never seen before. "I'm going to find the scammers." I blinked. "Can we?" "If we can track down the website she used, we can prove she found it herself. And if we can't, then we start showing people the truth about what she's been doing." For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw determination replacing Daniel's exhaustion. Linda had started a war to force us into paying her $50,000, but what she didn't realize was that her story had one very dangerous flaw, and once Daniel discovered it, everything she had told our family would start to fall apart. The night Daniel decided to start digging for the truth was the first night in over a week that I saw something other than exhaustion in his eyes. Determination. He sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open, scrolling through page after page of search results. "What exactly are you looking for?" I asked, setting a cup of tea beside him. "The platform she used." "Do you know the name of it?" "No, but scammers reuse templates all the time. Fake trading sites, fake dashboards, fake customer support. If she sends the same screenshots she sent HR to the rest of the family, I might be able to recognize the interface." I leaned against the counter and watched him work. "You think she kept screenshots?" "I'm almost certain," he replied. "People who get scammed usually take pictures of their profits before everything disappears. It's part of why they believe the investment is real." That made sense. The scammers show fake gains, the victim feels confident, then they send more money, then everything vanishes. Daniel kept digging. Forums, crypto scam databases, consumer protection websites. For hours, the only sounds in the kitchen were the clicking of keys and the hum of the refrigerator. Around midnight, he suddenly stopped. His shoulders stiffened. "I think I found something." My heart jumped. "What is it?" He turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was a warning article about a cryptocurrency scam that had spread through several countries over the last year. The article showed screenshots of a fake training dashboard, green profit numbers, a balance chart, a sleek black and gold interface. My stomach flipped. "Is that it?" Daniel nodded slowly. "That looks exactly like the screenshot she showed Rachel last month." "You saw it?" "Yeah," he said. "She sent it to the family group chat bragging about how much money she was making." I remembered that moment. At the time, everyone had congratulated her. She said she'd already made $8,000 in profit. But now we knew those numbers were fake. Daniel scrolled further down the article. Then he leaned closer to the screen. "Wait, what?" "They described the exact method," he read aloud. "The scammers contact victims through social media or messaging apps. They build a friendly relationship, then recommend an exclusive crypto trading platform. Victims are shown fake profits and encouraged to deposit increasing amounts of money." I felt a chill. That sounds exactly like Linda. Daniel nodded. Then he scrolled further and froze. Here it is. "What?" "They mention the messaging app." "What messaging app?" "Telegram." That detail made Daniel sit back slowly. "Mom doesn't even know how to use Telegram," he muttered. "You're sure?" "I'm positive." So someone helped her, or someone introduced her. That possibility opened a whole new question. Who would do that? Daniel didn't answer right away. He stared at the screen, thinking. Then he said something quietly. "I think I know." My stomach tightened. "Who?" "My cousin Jason." I blinked. "The one who always talks about crypto?" "Yeah." Jason was the self-proclaimed investment genius of the family. He constantly posted about new coins, trading opportunities, and financial freedom. But he also had a reputation for jumping into risky trends. "You think he showed her the platform?" "I wouldn't be surprised." Daniel opened his phone and scrolled through old family messages. Then he stopped. "There." He turned the phone toward me. It was a message from 2 months earlier. Jason had written, "Aunt Linda, you should check out the trading platform I'm using. It's been amazing." Linda had replied with excitement, "Send me the details." My heart started beating faster. This could prove something. Daniel nodded slowly. If Jason introduced her, then the whole story she told everyone falls apart, because her story said Daniel had convinced her, but the messages showed someone else. Jason. The next morning, Daniel called him. I listened from across the room. "Hey, Jason, I need to ask you something." Jason sounded cheerful. "Sure, what's up?" "Did you tell my mom about a crypto platform a couple months ago?" There was a pause. "Yeah? Why?" Daniel's eyes flicked toward me. "Which platform was it?" Jason hesitated. Why are you asking?" "Because Mom lost $50,000 on a scam site." The silence that followed was heavy. Then Jason said quietly, "Oh no. You sent her the link, didn't you?" "I didn't know it was a scam," Jason said quickly. "You told her to invest." "I just said it looked good." Daniel rubbed his forehead. "She thinks I convinced her." "What?" Jason sounded genuinely shocked. "She told the whole family." "Dude, that's not true," Jason said immediately. "I know." Another pause. Then Jason sighed. "I only sent her the link once. She asked for it." "Do you still have the messages?" "Probably." Daniel sat up straight. "Can you send them to me?" "Yeah, give me a minute." When Daniel ended the call, we both sat there silently. Then his phone buzzed. A new message from Jason. Screenshots. Lots of them. Daniel opened the first one, and we both stared, because the conversation was crystal clear. Linda had asked Jason about crypto. Jason had mentioned the platform. But the most important message came 2 days later. Linda had written, "I'm thinking about investing more, maybe 30K. Jason's reply, "Whoa, that's a lot. Are you sure? Crypto is risky." I looked at Daniel. 30,000? She ended up sending 50. But he warned her. Daniel nodded slowly. That message changes everything because it proved something very important. Linda hadn't been pressured. She had chosen to invest more, even after someone warned her about the risk. Daniel leaned back in his chair. For the first time since this started, we actually have proof. But what neither of us realized yet was that exposing the truth would trigger Linda's most desperate move yet, because when she realized her story was about to collapse, she would make one final accusation. And this time, it would tear the entire family apart. When Jason sent us screenshots proving Linda had asked about the crypto platform herself, it felt like someone had finally cracked a window open in a suffocating room. For the first time in weeks, Daniel and I had something solid, evidence. I watched Daniel reread the messages 3 times. "You see that?" he said quietly. I nodded. Jason had clearly warned her. Crypto is risky. Those 3 words destroyed the story she had been telling everyone. "Do you think the family will believe this?" I asked. Daniel hesitated. "I don't know." That answer wasn't comforting, but it was honest, because by that point, Linda's version of events had already spread through the entire family like wildfire. People had built opinions around it, and once people feel emotionally invested in a story, changing their minds can be difficult. Still, Daniel decided we had to try. He started with his sister Rachel. Out of everyone in the family, she was the one most likely to listen. He called her that evening and put the phone on speaker. "Hey," Rachel answered cautiously. "Rachel, I need you to look at something." "What?" "I'm sending you screenshots from Jason." There was a short pause as Daniel sent the images, then silence while she read. I could hear faint breathing on the other end of the line. Then Rachel spoke slowly. "Wait. Yeah," Daniel said quietly. "She asked Jason about crypto." "Exactly." "And he warned her." "Yes." Another long pause. "That's not what Mom told me," Rachel whispered. "I know." Rachel exhaled slowly. "So Mom invested on her own." Daniel didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The messages spoke for themselves. Rachel sounded shaken. "I need to talk to her." "Okay." "Daniel, if this is true—" "It is." "I'll call you back." The line went dead. Daniel and I sat quietly at the kitchen table. "Do you think she'll confront Linda?" I asked. "I think she has to." Rachel had always been close to their mother, but she also had a strong sense of fairness. If anyone in the family was going to question Linda's story, it would be her. About 40 minutes later, Daniel's phone rang again. "Rachel." He answered immediately. "How did it go?" Rachel didn't sound calm anymore. She sounded furious. "She lied to me." Daniel closed his eyes. "I figured." "She told me you pushed her to invest," Rachel snapped. "I didn't." "I know that now." "What did she say when you showed her the messages?" Rachel made a frustrated noise. "She said Jason is lying." Daniel frowned. "Why would Jason lie?" "She said you two planned it together." I stared at the phone in disbelief. "She thinks we're conspiring against her?" Daniel asked. "That's what she's saying." I felt anger bubbling in my chest. Linda wasn't just lying anymore. She was rewriting reality to protect herself. "What about the message where Jason warned her about the risk?" Daniel asked. Rachel sighed. "She said that message is fake." Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "Of course she did." "Daniel, I don't know what to believe anymore," Rachel admitted quietly. "That's exactly why I sent the screenshots." "I know." Rachel paused. Then she asked something that surprised both of us. "Did Mom really lose $50,000? Daniel looked at me. "That's what she told everyone." Rachel's voice lowered. "Because she told me something different today." Daniel sat up straight. "What?" "She said she lost $70,000. I blinked. "70?" I whispered. Daniel's eyebrows furrowed. "That's not what she said before." "I know." And when I asked her why the number changed, she got really defensive. Daniel leaned back slowly. "That's interesting." "What is?" "These scams often trick victims into sending more money after the initial investment." "How?" "They claim the victim needs to pay a release fee to withdraw their profits." I frowned. "So they keep asking for more payments?" "Exactly." "And people fall for this?" "All the time." My stomach tightened. "Daniel, what if Linda didn't just lose $50,000? That's what I'm wondering." Rachel said 70. "Right. But what if it's even more than that?" Daniel looked at me quietly. "That's what we need to find out." But before we had the chance to dig deeper, Linda made her next move. And this time, she didn't just lie to the family. She called someone else. Someone with authority. Someone who could turn this situation into a legal nightmare. Because the next morning, Daniel would receive a phone call from a police officer. The phone call came the next morning at exactly 9:12 a.m. Daniel had just sat down at his desk in the living room, preparing to start work, when his phone rang. I was in the kitchen making toast, half listening to the quiet sounds of our normal routine returning. For a brief moment, life almost felt ordinary again. Then Daniel said, "Hello?" I heard his voice change almost instantly. "I'm sorry, who is this?" I stepped out of the kitchen and watched his expression shift from confusion to something tighter. "Yes, this is Daniel." A pause. Then he looked straight at me. "The police?" he said quietly. My stomach dropped. I walked closer, my heart starting to pound. "Yes, I can talk," Daniel continued carefully. Another pause. Then he stood up slowly from his chair. "Wait, what accusation?" The room suddenly felt very small. Daniel listened silently for nearly 30 seconds. I could see his jaw clenching as the person on the other end spoke. Finally, he said something that made my chest feel like it had collapsed inward. "No, that's absolutely not true." He began pacing slowly across the room. "I never told my mother to invest in anything." Another long pause. "Yes, I understand she filed a report." Report. The word echoed in my head. Linda had actually called the police? Daniel rubbed his forehead as he listened. "I'm willing to cooperate," he said calmly, "but I want to be very clear. I did not pressure my mother into sending money to anyone." More silence. Then his shoulders relaxed slightly. "Okay, thank you." He ended the call. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I asked the question sitting like a stone in my chest. "What did they say?" Daniel sat back down slowly. "Mom filed a fraud complaint." I felt heat rush through my body. "Against you?" "Yeah." "What exactly did she claim?" He exhaled slowly. "She told them I convinced her to invest in cryptocurrency and that I might be connected to the scammers." The words felt surreal. "That's insane." "I know." "She's accusing you of being part of the scam?" "Basically." My hands started shaking. "That could ruin your life." "I know." But the officer didn't sound convinced, Daniel added quickly. "What do you mean?" "He said they receive a lot of reports like this, family disputes mixed with financial losses." That made a little sense. Still, the idea that Linda had involved law enforcement felt like crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "What did the officer want?" I asked. "Just my side of the story." "And?" He told him the truth. Daniel opened his laptop and showed me a document he had started typing. "What's that?" "A timeline." Of course. Daniel had always been organized. He had written out every event from the moment Linda first called us crying about the lost money. Dates, conversations, messages, screenshots, everything. "This helps show the bigger picture," he explained. "And Jason's messages? I'm including those too. Because those messages were critical. They proved Linda had approached someone else about crypto first. They also proved someone had warned her about the risks, which meant Daniel couldn't possibly have pressured her." "What did the officers say after you explained?" I asked. "He thanked me and said they'll review the information." "That's it?" "For now." It wasn't exactly comforting, but it was something. The rest of that day passed in a strange haze. We kept checking our phones, waiting, expecting another explosion from Linda. And by evening, it came. Rachel called again. Her voice sounded tired. "Mom told me she filed a police report." Daniel sighed. "Yeah, we got a call this morning." "Daniel, I'm so sorry. It's not your fault." "I talked to Jason again," she continued. "And? He swears he only mentioned the platform once. That matches the messages." Rachel hesitated. "Daniel, there's something else." "What?" "I asked Mom for proof of the transfers. My ears perked up. And? She refused. Daniel frowned. What do you mean she refused? She said the scammers deleted everything. That's not how bank transfers work. I know. Rachel sounded frustrated now. I asked her bank statement. And? She said it's private. Daniel let out a slow breath. That's suspicious. That's exactly what I thought. Rachel paused. Then she said something that made both of us sit up straight. Daniel, I don't think she actually lost $50,000. My heart skipped. What makes you say that? Daniel asked. Because she slipped up. How? She told Aunt Karen yesterday that the scammers stole the money from her account. Daniel frowned. But earlier she said she transferred it. Exactly. Those two stories couldn't both be true. Either she willingly sent the money or someone hacked her account. But those were completely different situations. She's changing the story again, Daniel said quietly. Rachel sighed. I'm starting to think Mom is panicking. Why? Because the truth is catching up to her. That thought hung heavy in the air. Because if Mom was panicking, it meant there was something she was desperately trying to hide. After the call ended, Daniel sat quietly for a long time. What are you thinking? I asked. That the money might not be the real story. What do you mean? He turned toward me slowly. What if Mom didn't just lose money to scammers? My stomach tightened. Then where did it go? Daniel looked down at the laptop screen. I think we're about to find out. And 2 days later, we did. Because someone from Linda's bank called, and what they revealed would shock our entire family. 2 days after Daniel spoke with the police officer, something happened that none of us were expecting. Linda's bank called Rachel. Not Daniel, not me. Rachel. At first, Rachel almost ignored the call. She told us later she assumed it was just another automated message about account security or promotional offers. But something made her answer, and that decision changed everything. It was early afternoon when my phone rang. I saw Rachel's name on the screen and answered immediately. Hey, Rachel. She didn't say hello. Her voice sounded breathless. You need to put Daniel on speaker right now. Daniel was sitting beside me at the dining table, halfway through answering work emails. I gestured for him to listen. You're on speaker, he said. Rachel took a shaky breath. I just got off the phone with Mom's bank. Daniel and I exchanged a look. What happened? He asked. They were calling because Mom listed me as her emergency contact. That makes sense, Daniel said. But that's not why they called, Rachel replied. The tension in her voice made my stomach twist. Then why did they call? They wanted to confirm something about a series of large transfers. Daniel sat up straight. What kind of transfers? Rachel paused. Wire transfers. My chest tightened. How many? Daniel asked carefully. 8. Daniel and I looked at each other. 8 transfers? That doesn't sound like a single investment, I said quietly. It wasn't, Rachel replied. Rachel, how much money are we talking about? Daniel asked. There was a long silence on the line. Then she said the number. $120,000. For a moment, I honestly thought I had misheard her. Daniel blinked. What? The bank confirmed the total amount transferred over the last 3 months was about $120,000. My heart started pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. But she told everyone 50, I whispered. I know, Rachel said. And then 70, Daniel added. Yeah. None of us spoke for a few seconds. The number was just too big. Rachel, where did she get that much money? Daniel finally asked. I don't know. But she only had about $60,000 in savings. I know. Daniel rubbed his temples. Did the bank say where the transfers went? They said the funds were sent to multiple crypto wallets. That matched the scam pattern we'd read about, but something still didn't make sense. Rachel, I said slowly, did Mom actually have $120,000 available? No. Then where did the rest come from? Rachel hesitated. The bank mentioned something else. My stomach sank. What? She took out a personal loan. Daniel's head snapped up. A loan? Yes. For how much? $40,000. The room felt suddenly colder. So she had 60 in savings, borrowed 40, and the rest came from a credit line on her house, Rachel finished. Daniel leaned back in his chair, stunned. She mortgaged her house? Part of it, yeah. The full picture started forming in my mind like a storm cloud. Linda hadn't just lost her savings, she had destroyed her financial stability. And then she tried to make us responsible for fixing it. Oh my God, I whispered. Rachel sounded like she was on the verge of tears. I had no idea it was this bad. Daniel's voice softened slightly. Rachel, none of us did. But why would she lie about the amount? Daniel answered quietly. Because if people knew the real number, they'd ask more questions. And that was exactly right. Losing $50,000 sounded like a tragic mistake. Losing $120,000 sounded reckless. Did the bank say anything else? Daniel asked. Rachel hesitated again. Yeah. What? They asked if Mom had been in contact with someone online. Daniel frowned. That's standard for scam investigations. But they also asked if she had sent money to anyone she knew. The question made my heart skip. What do you mean? I asked. Rachel exhaled slowly. One of the transfers didn't go to a crypto wallet. Daniel leaned forward. Where did it go? Rachel spoke carefully. To a personal bank account. The air in the room went completely still. Daniel's voice dropped. Whose account? That's the thing, Rachel had. The bank wouldn't tell me. Of course they wouldn't. Privacy laws. But the implication was obvious. One of those 8 transfers hadn't gone to scammers. It had gone to a person. Someone with a regular bank account. Someone real. Rachel, Daniel said slowly, did Mom say anything about sending money to someone she knows? No. Not once? Never. Daniel looked at me, and I knew we both were thinking the same thing. Linda's story had just gotten a lot more complicated. Because if one transfer went to a real person, then the situation wasn't just a scam. There was another player involved. Someone Linda hadn't mentioned. Rachel, Daniel said slowly, can you ask the bank what day that transfer happened? I already did. And? It was 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. That's interesting. Why? Because that's right before she started telling everyone about the scam. The timing felt too perfect, almost like the story had been built afterward to explain missing money. But if that was true, then the question became terrifyingly simple. Who received that transfer and why? Later that night, Daniel sat quietly staring at the bank information Rachel had forwarded us. Something about this doesn't add up, he said. What do you mean? He pointed at the timeline. The first 6 transfers matched the scam pattern. And the 7th? Also crypto. And the 8th? That's the one that went to a personal bank account. My chest felt a chill. Daniel, whispered I, what if Mom didn't get scammed for all of it? He looked at me slowly. That's exactly what I'm starting to think. And the next day, we finally learned the identity of the person who received that mysterious transfer. When we did, the truth stunned the entire family because the money hadn't gone to a stranger. It had gone to someone much closer, someone Linda trusted, someone who had been watching the entire family fight over the missing money while staying completely silent. The truth about that 8th transfer came from the one person none of us expected. Jason. 2 days after Rachel told us about the bank call, Daniel received a message from him late in the evening. "Hey, we need to talk." Daniel showed me the phone. "That doesn't sound good," I said. "No, it doesn't." He called Jason immediately and put him on speaker. Jason sounded nervous, like someone pacing in a room. "Look, before you say anything," Jason began, "I just want you to know I didn't tell anyone about this." Daniel frowned. "About what?" There was a pause. Then Jason said quietly, "About the money your mom sent me." The words landed in the room like a thunderclap. I felt my breath catch. Daniel went completely still. "What?" Jason exhaled slowly. "She wired me $20,000. The silence that followed felt endless. 20,000! Daniel's voice finally came out low and controlled. "When?" "About 3 weeks ago." My heart started pounding. That matched the timeline Rachel had given us. "Why?" Daniel asked. Jason hesitated. "She said she needed help." "What kind of help?" Jason sounded embarrassed now. "She said the platform was asking for a withdrawal fee." Daniel closed his eyes. Of course. We had read about that trick. The scammers convince victims that they need to pay a release fee before withdrawing profits. But once the victim sends that money, the scammers disappear. "So Mom asked you to send the fee for her?" Daniel asked. "Yeah," Jason admitted. "Why didn't she send it herself?" Jason cleared his throat. "She said the platform was rejecting her bank transfers. She thought maybe they flagged her account." My stomach twisted. "So Mom wired you $20,000 and asked you to send it in crypto to the platform," Jason finished. Daniel leaned back slowly. "And you did?" Jason groaned. "Yeah." "Jason!" I know, he said quickly. "It was stupid." The full picture started forming in my mind. Linda had been deep in the scam. When the fake platform demanded a withdrawal fee, she panicked. Instead of stopping, she found another way to send the money. Through Jason. "You didn't tell anyone?" Daniel asked. "No." "Why not?" Jason sighed. "Because your mom begged me not to." My jaw tightened. "Of course she did," I muttered. Jason continued. "She made it sound like you pushed her into investing?" "Yes. That's not what happened." "I know." There was a pause before Jason asked quietly, "So what are you going to do?" Daniel looked at me for a moment. Then he answered, "I think the family deserves the truth." Jason hesitated. "You want me to show them the transfer?" "That would help." Jason sighed. "This is going to blow up the entire family." Daniel's voice stayed calm. "It already has." Jason didn't argue with that, because he knew it was true. The next evening, Rachel organized a family video call. It was supposed to clear everything up. At least, that was the hope. But when the call started, the tension was so thick you could practically feel it through the screen. Linda joined first. Her face appeared on the screen looking tired and irritated. Then Aunt Karen joined. Then 2 more cousins. Then Jason. Finally, Daniel. And me beside him. Linda immediately started talking. "I'm glad everyone is here," she said dramatically, "because I want the truth to come out." Daniel raised an eyebrow slightly. "Me too." She ignored him. "I trusted my own son, and he encouraged me to invest money I couldn't afford to lose." Rachel cleared her throat. "Mom," but Linda kept going, "and now that everything is gone, he refuses to take responsibility." I felt my hands clench. The lie sounded even worse hearing it out loud. Then Daniel spoke calmly. "Mom, do you remember sending Jason $20,000 3 weeks ago?" Linda froze. Just for a second, but it was enough. Her eyes flicked toward Jason's square on the screen. The room went quiet. Rachel frowned. Mom, what is he talking about? Linda's voice tightened. I don't know. Jason sighed. Jason, I still have the wire transfer. The silence that followed was heavy. Linda's face went pale. You promised you wouldn't show anyone. Gasps echoed through the call. Rachel leaned closer to her camera. Mom, you sent Jason money? Jason held up his phone. I've got the receipt right here. Linda's expression shifted from shock to anger. That was different. How? Daniel asked. That was part of the investment. Jason shook his head. No, that was the withdrawal fee. More silence. Rachel looked stunned. Mom, you paid a withdrawal fee? Linda's voice rose defensively. Well, how was I supposed to know? Daniel's voice softened. Mom, you know that's a common scam tactic. Linda's eyes filled with frustration. Well, how was I supposed to know? Rachel's voice softened. Mom, why didn't you tell us about the extra money? Linda didn't answer, because the truth was becoming impossible to hide. She hadn't just lost $50,000. She hadn't even just lost $70,000. She had lost $120,000. And now, the entire family was beginning to see the real story. But what none of us expected was what Linda said next. Because instead of admitting the truth, she made one final accusation. And this one would change everything. The moment Jason mentioned the $20,000 transfer during the family video call, the entire conversation shifted. Before that, Linda had been confident, accusatory, certain that the story she told would hold together. But now, the cracks were showing. You could see it in her face. Her eyes darted from screen to screen like she was searching for someone to rescue her from the corner she had backed herself into. Rachel was the first one to speak again. Mom, you told me the scammers stole the money from your account. Linda's voice sharpened immediately. They basically did. But you transferred it, Rachel said carefully. That's not the same thing, Linda snapped. The room fell quiet again. Jason leaned toward his camera. Linda, you wired me $20,000 so I could send it in crypto. That was part of the investment, she said quickly. No, Jason replied calmly. You told me it was a withdrawal fee. Linda's face flushed red. I could practically feel the tension vibrating through the call. Daniel sat beside me, silent but steady. Then Rachel spoke again, more firmly this time. Mom, how much money did you actually send to these people? Linda didn't answer. Mom, Rachel repeated, how much? Finally, Linda muttered something under her breath. What? Rachel asked. Linda's shoulders slumped slightly. 120,000. Gasps echoed through the call. Aunt Karen actually covered her mouth. That's impossible, one cousin whispered. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, because now everyone finally knew the truth, or at least part of it. Rachel sounded stunned. Mom, that's everything you had. Linda's voice trembled. I thought I was going to double it. The words hung there for a moment. That was the cruel psychology of scams. They don't just steal money, they steal hope and pride. Rachel spoke more gently now. Mom, why didn't you tell me the real amount? Linda's head snapped up. Because none of you would understand. Daniel finally spoke. You blamed me. Linda's eyes filled with anger again. Because you should have stopped me. The call erupted with overlapping voices. Daniel didn't even know, Rachel argued. You're twisting things, Linda shouted. Jason rubbed his forehead. Linda, this whole thing started because of scammers. But Linda wasn't ready to face that. Instead, she turned toward Daniel square on the screen with a look that felt almost desperate. "You work in finance," she yelled. "You should have warned me." Daniel kept his voice calm. "Mom, you never asked for help until after the scam. You should have known. I didn't even know you were investing." Linda's breathing became heavier. Then she said something that stunned the entire call. "Well, maybe I wouldn't have needed the money if you two actually helped me." Daniel blinked. "What?" Linda's voice rose again. "You and your wife sit there in that nice house while I struggle." I felt a wave of disbelief wash over me. "We're not rich," I said quietly, but Linda ignored me. "You could have helped me months ago." "With what?" Daniel asked. "Money." Rachel shook her head. "Mom, you never asked for help until after the scam." Linda's voice cracked. "Because I was trying to make something better for myself." For a moment, the anger faded, and all I saw was embarrassment, fear, pride trying to hold itself together. Then Aunt Karen spoke softly. "Linda, scams happen, but blaming Daniel won't fix this." Linda looked like she had been slapped. "So you're taking their side now?" "There aren't sides," Karen said gently. "There is," Linda insisted. And then she said the one thing that finally broke the illusion she had built. "If Daniel had just given me the $50,000 like I asked, none of this would have come out." The call went completely silent because that sentence revealed the truth. She hadn't been seeking help. She was trying to cover the loss. Daniel spoke slowly. "So the plan was to replace the money with ours and pretend the investment never failed." Linda didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her silence said everything. Rachel looked heartbroken. "Mom, you were going to let Daniel take the blame for this." Linda's eyes filled with tears. "I was desperate." "And now?" Rachel asked quietly. Linda didn't answer again, because there was nothing left to defend. The truth had unfolded in front of everyone. The accusations, the lies, the shifting stories, all of it pointed to one painful reality. Linda had been trying to escape the consequences of her own decision at any cost, even if that meant destroying her relationship with her son. The call ended awkwardly a few minutes later. No shouting, no dramatic exits, just silence and tired goodbyes. After the screen went dark, Daniel leaned back in his chair. For the first time in weeks, the tension in his shoulders loosened slightly. "Well," he said quietly, "I think the truth finally came out." I nodded, but I could still feel something heavy lingering in the room. Because even though the family now knew what really happened, the damage Linda had caused wasn't something that could disappear overnight. The accusations, the police report, the attempt to ruin Daniel's career, all of that existed. And the next morning, we would learn whether Linda was ready to face the consequences of everything she had done. Because someone unexpected was about to call Daniel, someone who had been silent throughout the entire chaos, someone whose words would force Linda to finally confront the reality she had been avoiding. The morning after the family video call felt strangely quiet. For weeks, our phones had been buzzing nonstop with accusations, messages, and tension from every direction. But that morning, there was nothing. No angry texts, no dramatic posts, just silence. Daniel sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee in his hands, staring out the window like someone who had just finished a long storm and wasn't quite sure if the sky was really clear yet. "Do you think it's over?" I asked softly. He shrugged. "I think the truth is out, but that doesn't mean the damage disappears." He nodded. That part was true. Even though the family now knew Linda had lost far more money than she admitted, and even though they had seen proof that Daniel never convinced her to invest, weeks of lies and accusations don't simply vanish overnight. Reputations take time to heal. Trust takes even longer. Around mid-morning, Daniel's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. It's Aunt Karen. I expected another tense conversation, but when he answered, Karen's voice sounded calm. "Daniel, I wanted to talk to you privately." "Okay." "I owe you an apology." Daniel blinked. "For what?" "For believing Linda's story so quickly." Daniel didn't respond immediately. Karen continued. "I should have asked more questions before assuming the worst." "I understand," Daniel said quietly. "No, you shouldn't have had to deal with that." There was a pause. Then Karen added something unexpected. "She spoke to your mother this morning." Daniel straightened slightly. "And?" Karen sighed. "She's finally starting to realize what she did." I wasn't sure what that meant, but it sounded important. "What did she say?" Daniel asked. Karen hesitated before answering. She admitted she panicked. That much is obvious. She said she felt trapped once the money was gone. Daniel rubbed his forehead. That doesn't explain why she blamed me. I asked her the same question. "And?" Karen spoke slowly. "She said she thought if the family believed you were responsible, you might help pay it back just to make the conflict stop." My stomach twisted. That confirmed exactly what we suspected. Linda had tried to pressure us through shame. Karen continued. She didn't think it would spiral this far. Daniel let out a soft, tired laugh. "She called the police on me." "I know," Karen said quietly. "And she contacted my employer." "Yes, that's pretty far." Karen didn't argue. Instead, she said something that surprised both of us. "She wants to apologize." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "That's new." "She knows the truth came out last night." "Yeah? And she knows the family is angry." Daniel was silent for a moment. Then he asked the question that had been sitting in the back of his mind all morning. "Did she withdraw the police report?" Karen responded quickly. "Yes." That answer made a wave of tension release from Daniel's shoulders. "Good." "She also called your company." Daniel looked up. "What?" "She told them you never advised her to invest." That was the first real piece of closure we had received since this nightmare began. Daniel let out a long breath. "Thank you for telling me." But Karen wasn't finished. "There's one more thing." "What?" "She's going to lose the house." The words landed heavily in the room. Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" "The loan and credit line she took out, she can't afford the payments." Of course she couldn't. $120,000 was an enormous burden. "Has she spoken to the bank?" "Yes." "And?" "They're restructuring the debt, but she'll probably have to sell." The silence that followed felt complicated. Linda had caused enormous damage with her lies, but hearing that she might lose her home still felt painful, because despite everything, she was still Daniel's mother. Karen spoke gently. "She's facing the consequences now." Daniel nodded slowly. "I hope she learns from this." Karen sighed. "I think she already has." After the call ended, Daniel sat quietly for a long time. "What are you thinking?" I asked. He stared at the coffee in his cup. "I'm thinking this whole situation didn't need to happen." "No. If she had just told the truth from the beginning, we would have tried to help her figure things out. That's what families do. But instead, she tried to force us into fixing it." I nodded. "And that made everything worse." Daniel finally looked up. "But at least the truth is out now." And that was the most important part, because the truth had done something powerful. It had untangled the lies. It had cleared Daniel's name, and it had forced the family to see the real story. But the final chapter of this situation came a week later, when Linda came to our house again. This time, not to demand money, but to say something she had never said during the entire ordeal. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon when Linda showed up at our door. I had been in the living room reading, and Daniel was at his desk typing quietly when the knock echoed through the house. I opened the door and froze. There she was, my husband's mother, looking smaller somehow, like the weight of the last few weeks had physically pressed her down. Her eyes were red, not from anger this time, but from exhaustion and something heavier, regret. "Hi," she said softly. I stepped aside to let her in. She hesitated at the threshold, as if unsure if she belonged there. Daniel finally stood, his expression unreadable. "Mom," he said carefully, "come in." She nodded and shuffled toward the couch. I offered her a seat, but she shook her head. "I'll stand," she murmured. For a moment, none of us spoke. The tension from the past few weeks seemed to linger in the air, thick and suffocating. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, I'm sorry." Daniel and I exchanged a glance. Not the angry, defensive apology she had shouted at us over the phone or in text. This was quiet, humble, honest. "For everything," she continued. "For lying, for blaming you, Daniel, for dragging the family into this. I panicked. I was ashamed, and I thought I could fix it without anyone knowing. I was wrong." Daniel's shoulders softened slightly. He had expected a fight. He had expected more deflection, but he hadn't expected this. "I lost the money," she said. "All of it. The savings, the loan, the credit line, it's gone. And I realized trying to make someone else responsible for my mistakes only made everything worse." I felt tears prick my eyes. Weeks of stress, sleepless nights, and fear of losing Daniel's career had all been lifted just slightly by the weight of her words. Daniel took a deep breath. "Daniel, I can't fix what happened, but I can't hate you for it either. You made mistakes, big ones, but the truth is out now. That's what matters." Linda blinked, her eyes glistening. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I might lose my home. I might lose respect from the family. I almost lost you, Daniel." "You didn't," he said firmly. "It took courage for you to face us. That's the first step." She looked at me, and I saw vulnerability I hadn't seen before. "And you and Sajad, you've been nothing but patient. I don't deserve that." "You're family," I said quietly. "Even when we're angry, even when we're hurt, that doesn't disappear. We just need honesty from now on." Linda nodded slowly, as if the words sank into her very bones. I will. I promise. No more lies, no more hiding." For the first time in weeks, we felt a tentative peace settle over the room. It wasn't perfect, the financial damage couldn't be undone, the trust had been shaken, but there was something more important now, the beginning of rebuilding. Rachel called that evening to follow up. She said the family had seen the call and the screenshots from Jason. Everyone finally understood that Daniel had never pressured his mother. That revelation alone began to repair the fractures Linda's lies had caused. Linda even started making arrangements to sell her house responsibly, speaking with the bank and financial advisors. She asked for help from family members, not to cover her mistakes, but to learn how to prevent them in the future. Daniel and I watched her make phone calls, make notes, and plan her next steps. The woman who had stormed into our lives demanding money had been replaced by someone humbled, reflective, and willing to face reality. A few days later, Linda came over again, not to argue, not to demand, but just to sit and talk. She shared stories of the lessons she had learned, not just about money, but about honesty, pride, and responsibility. "I know I've lost a lot," she said quietly, "but I hope I haven't lost you, Daniel." "You haven't," he said firmly. We're still your family, but things will only work if we all face the truth from now on." I nodded. The truth is hard, sometimes more painful than we want, but it's the only way forward. Linda reached out and held Daniel's hand. "Thank you for not giving up on me." That moment, quiet and unremarkable on the surface, felt monumental. It was the moment we realized the storm had passed, but more importantly, it was the moment the family began healing. Weeks later, Linda sold her house, paid off her debts as best as she could, and began to rebuild her life with honesty as her guide. The family slowly regained trust in her, and Daniel's reputation remained intact. Most importantly, the lessons were clear. Desperation can cloud judgment, lies can multiply a problem, and no one should ever be forced to shoulder someone else's mistakes. Looking back now, I realize how fragile trust is, but also how resilient love can be. Families fight, sometimes bitterly. Mistakes happen, sometimes painfully, but when honesty is restored and when people face the consequences without bitterness or anger, there's a way forward. Linda's story could have destroyed us. Her lies could have torn the family apart, cost Daniel his career, and left me wondering if we would ever feel safe again. But in the end, the truth prevailed. She faced the consequences, admitted her mistakes, and learned that accountability isn't shame, it's freedom. And that is the story I want everyone to remember. Even when betrayal and panic push people to act selfishly, honesty, courage, and reflection can restore what was broken. Families aren't perfect. We make mistakes, sometimes huge, devastating mistakes. But the real lesson here is simple. Facing the truth, even when it hurts, is the first step towards forgiveness, healing, and moving forward together. Linda learned it the hard way. Daniel and I watched it unfold, and the rest of the family, slowly, carefully, began to understand it too. In the end, we were all changed by what happened, not just by the loss of money, not just by the lies, but by the revelation that even the deepest mistakes can be the foundation for growth, understanding, and renewed trust, if only we are willing to face them. And that is how a 50,000 crypto scam almost destroyed a family, but instead became the catalyst for the hardest, most important lessons we could ever learn about honesty, accountability, and love.